After graduating from business school in 1962, Phil found himself back at home living with his parents. That familiar feeling was back, that his life was just passing him by, and he needed to do something meaningful. One day, Phil finally decided he couldn't just keep waiting for some magic opportunity, and he had to go and create an opportunity for himself. So Phil and one of his friends decided to take a long trip to go traveling around the world. Phil had stayed obsessed with his idea of bringing Japanese shoes to the American market, and so he figured as part of the trip, he would visit Japan to see if he could make his crazy idea into a reality. But first, they visited classic European cities, backpacked through Asia, and even stopped in Greece, where Phil saw the Temple of Athena Nike, dedicated to the goddess of victory. Phil and his friend then went to Hawaii, and that's where things changed. Phil and his friends surfed, relaxed on the beach, and loved the whole place so much, they ended up getting jobs in Honolulu selling encyclopedias door to door, simply so they could afford to stay in this Hawaiian paradise a little longer. However, Phil was pretty shy and didn't do well at the sales job at all, and eventually he decided he'd done enough relaxing and it was time to leave. His friend had met a girl and stayed behind though, so Phil said goodbye and continued his trip alone. And Phil already knew exactly where he wanted to go next. It was time to get serious about his dream. It was time to go to Japan. In 1962, in the city of Kobe, Phil came across one particular running shoe that caught his eye. The brand was called Tiger, and the shoes were manufactured by a company called Onitsuka. Not only did he like the design, the shoes ticked the two main criteria Phil needed. They were clearly high quality shoes, and yet they were relatively cheap. Phil liked the shoes so much that he cold called the owners of the shoe brand and managed to arrange a meeting. Feeling both nervous and excited, Phil put on a suit and went to meet the manufacturers of the Japanese shoe he liked so much. Before going, he bought a copy of How to Do Business with the Japanese and memorized as much information as he could. Despite Phil having zero expertise in the business, he introduced himself in the meeting as an American shoe distributor who was going to help market their shoes in America. It turns out that Onitsuka had been looking for a way to sell its shoes in America already, so they were actually very excited when Phil came to them with the same idea. Perhaps that's why they were willing to overlook the fact that Phil looked like he was fresh out of university, which he quite literally was. But despite being a recent graduate in his 20s with no actual experience of running a business, Phil had memorized lots of facts and statistics about the American shoe market from his assignment at university, and so he was basically able to recite parts of his presentation during the meeting, and so it looked like he completely knew what he was talking about. The Japanese managers were impressed. However, one of them asked Phil a very simple question. What's the name of the company you're from? Phil suddenly felt his heart beating faster. Of course, the truth was, Phil didn't have a company name, because he didn't actually have a company yet. He just had this crazy idea to import Japanese shoes to America. Phil's mind started racing. For a split second, he felt completely out of his depth and just wanted to be back home with his parents. And that's when his mind suddenly flashed to the blue ribbons from his childhood that he used to have hung up on his wall. After a second pause, Phil replied, "Gentlemen, I represent Blue Ribbon Sports of Portland, Oregon." He just kind of blurted the name out of nowhere, since in truth, he'd never expected to get this far. But after inventing a company name on the spot, Phil could feel his confidence increasing. He went on to explain the size of the American market and how Onitsuka's Tiger shoes were different to what they had in America, meaning there was a huge opportunity if Onitsuka and him teamed up. The Japanese company was so keen, they basically began pitching Phil and asked him if he would be their distribution partner in the US, to which Phil obviously agreed. And then he asked them to ship over some samples to his address in America. It seemed like Phil's crazy idea was about to become a reality.